Satisfied, he withdrew into the cliff's caverns. The man hoped he would remain undisturbed afterward, but over the years, more and more villagers found their way to the farmlands. Each group failed to be deterred by the ominous abandoned staircase left behind by the first group of villagers, so the man had no choice but to dispose of them in his violent ways. Decades passed, and the lingering spirits of those slaughtered villagers crowded the cliffs, their wails echoing off the cavern walls. Each new villager that arrived felt the ghost trying to send them away, shuffling their inventories to scare them, but failed to heed their warning. Dozens of villagers suffered the same gruesome fate. Among these spirits, one truth was known. The Farlands man never left any survivors. Another century passed before a villager named Tommy Stone arrived at the base of the cliffs. His reason for coming here was different. While most villagers craved honor and heroism, Tommy was called here by a faint whisper in the back of his mind. So instead of climbing to the top of the cliffs as the others before him had, Tommy curiously followed the voice's instructions to crawl through the caves at the bottom. The Farlands man, who had seen Tommy approaching from a distance, didn't expect this, and raced down to find him. Meanwhile, guided by the voice that grew stronger in his mind, Tommy maneuvered through the caves as if he knew it by heart. He reached a cavern that contained some minerals that he recognized as redstone, but they'd been mined and laid out in a very intricate pattern. Tommy followed the voice's instructions to destroy it, but before he could lay a finger on the dust, the Farlands man teleported directly in front of him.
You ready?
Please, no! Yes, Tommy ducked under the man's axe, but its second swing killed him instantly. His body fell, and the Farlands man saw that Tommy's last act had been to place TNT next to the redstone. The TNT exploded, destroying the redstone dust, and the spell that bound the purling noise to the Farlands man was broken. No longer under his control, the cliffs came tumbling down, crushing the man beneath them. Or at least, that's how the story goes.
Be careful.
When am I not?
A trick question.
Hey, why can't I shoot this person? Nothing's gonna be you.
Ain't been out in a while.
It's like we're on a date.
Well, I am the romantic type.
Either way.
Of all the monsters that plague the night in Minecraft, the deadliest is
Where's the ladder?
It's got to be around here somewhere.
Where did this explosive menace come from? By researching lore and examining findings in the game, we can uncover the true story of Minecraft's first creeper. When the first villages were being founded, the stressful job of keeping everyone fed fell to the farmers. The pressure was even more pronounced in desert villages, where conditions were harsh, food was scarce, and pillager raids often ruined entire harvests. No! My potatoes! These desert villages developed a different social hierarchy from villages with plentiful crops. A farming chief was chosen to sit among the village elders and ensure that food was responsibly harvested and fairly distributed. However, when there wasn't enough to go around, it was often the lowly field hands who took the blame. Legend tells us about one such village where constant lightning storms threatened to destroy everything they had built. It was here that the first creeper was born. In an attempt to appease whatever deity they had angered, the village elders ordered the ancient builders to construct a large temple, the first of its kind. Once completed, the villagers began bringing their valuables into the pyramid as offerings. They tucked these items away deep underground, with TNT strategically placed to protect them from pillagers and raiders. When the lightning continued, the village elders decided to take more extreme measures. It is decided that guards bring him to us. One of the poor farmers, known as Stevius, was rounded up by the guards and taken away from his family. He was locked inside the top of the temple and left to starve. The ultimate sacrifice to calm the lightning storms. Unsure of what to do, he began looking through the various chests that had been hidden in the temple. They were filled with offerings like gold and emeralds. There was also leftover gunpowder from the traps that had been laid throughout the temple. As he held the gunpowder, he heard a loud rumble overhead. A massive storm was rapidly forming, and the rest of the villagers took shelter in their sandstone homes. The village elders watched from afar, hoping their offering would work. Back in the temple, Stevius walked into the center of the room to get a better look. He gazed upward, gunpowder in hand, as a bolt of lightning struck. A large the top of the temple, startling the already frightened villagers hiding in their homes. After the storm ended, the whole community went to inspect the
Where were all
damage.
these coming from?
Nothing could have prepared them for what they had found.
Coming out of
What
something.
in the
Stay
world
away.
is
There's
that?
our culprit.
Where are its arms?
Body's
The
not that
lightning
old.
strike had fused with the
keep your
gunpowder
eyes
to
and ears
transform the farmer into something unrecognizable.
Feel that they're
His skin had turned green and was covered in scales.
You
The
okay?
arms he had
Yeah.
used to tend the fields
Damn
were
ceiling's
gone.
falling
His
apart. Be
only
careful.
appendages now were the 4 feet
This
at the
way.
base of his long body. Stevious's blood surged through his veins,
Easy.
alive with explosive energy. The villagers watched in horror as the
Watch it.
creature silently creeped toward them. They feared the monster that had been created, but what the villagers saw as a curse, the elders saw as an opportunity. That night, the desert village elders held a closed-door
do you
session
wanna do?
and decided what they would do with the first creeper. They commanded the ancient builders to reconstruct the temple, providing no explanation as to why. In secret, they kidnapped a number of villagers and escorted them to the temple, one by one. Any questions that the villagers asked about the disappearances or the creeper went unanswered. Lightning storms rolled through the desert, and for once, the elders prayed that they wouldn't stop. Within the temple walls, they were trying to create an army of creepers whose glorious purpose was to bring down the nearby pillager outposts. Although they hadn't yet witnessed the explosive power each creeper contained, the elders could sense their potential. However, they soon learned that their plan was easier said than done. The original creeper's creation was difficult to replicate. Many of the subjects were killed by the lightning strike, or exploded soon after becoming creepers. After months of attempted transformations, the elders had a total of 10 creepers in their possession, locked away to remain hidden from the rest of the village.
Just sit tight, you creeps. We have big plans for you.
As he sat in prison, Stevius, the first creeper, thought longingly of his family. He looked around at the other creepers. They too had been villagers once, and they also wished to be reunited with their families. When the elders returned, the creepers begged them to let them go see their loved ones one last time. The elders refused and informed the creepers of their plan. They believed that they had enough creepers to launch an attack on the nearest pillager outpost. The elders left, allowing the creepers to think about their upcoming mission.
Did they say pillages? There's no way we can go against those guys. We don't even have arms.
The creepers began to panic, knowing they would easily be killed by the villagers' crossbows. Stevius calmed them down, and together they planned their escape. That night, when a guard came to check on them, they rushed him and escaped from their prison. As they made their way towards the village, alarms sounded. They were stopped by
Money,
guards.
money,
Two of the creepers
Stop.
letting out a loud hiss as their eyes began to glow. They exchanged several of the guards. The other creepers were horrified as the reality of their situation set in. They weren't soldiers, they were followers. Before they could escape, the elders commanded iron golems to capture them. Once subdued,
Money.
the remaining creepers were escorted back to their prison and placed under constant supervision by the iron golems.
Alright, that's all
Before
of them.
long, the time came for the creepers to attack. The elders and their iron
back
golems
into
led
the
the
city.
caravan of creepers marching towards the pillager base, eager to see their plans unfold. Their journey to the outpost was more than a day's travel, so when the sun set, the group stopped to camp for the night. The villager elders built temporary dirt shelters to keep themselves safe from the mobs that roamed at night. The creepers, however, couldn't build without any arms. They begged the villagers to make shelters for them, terrified of the spiders and skeletons that started appearing around them.
Please, they'll kill us. You need us to make it to the outpost alive, right? Don't you?
No matter how they begged, the villagers refused, leaving the creepers to fend for themselves outside. Alone in the dark,
That's the one thing
panic
I
set
love
in
about
amongst them.
this.
Stevius attempted to dig dirt to make a shelter, but the soil
Won't you ask
wouldn't
Bill to
yield
get
to
you
his
some of them air
padding feet.
fresheners?
Fury sparked in his chest at the
Don't
elders'
wanna
betrayal,
fire, that'd be
and
a
he
good
felt
idea.
himself grow, emitting a blinking light. His fellow creepers called out to him, trying to calm him before it was too late. They reminded him of his family, and that he'd never see them again if he gave in to the anger. Stevius took a deep breath, conceding that the others were right. Suddenly, the group heard a familiar hiss in the dark. Huddled together in fear, the creepers watched a spider slowly approach them.
What is it doing? Doesn't it see us?
The spider stared each of the creepers down, its red eyes trying to make sense of the unfamiliar creatures, then turned to calmly walk away. The creepers then noticed a skeleton nearby, who didn't seem bothered by their presence at all. It seemed ominous that these creatures had no hostile reaction to them. Across the field, Stevia spotted an Enderman and made his way towards it. There was one thing he knew, it was that Endermen hate being looked in the eye. So that's exactly what Stevius did. The Enderman gazed serenely back at him, and in its deep purple eyes, Stevius saw the horrifying truth. He was one of them. It was then that the creepers knew that they truly weren't villagers anymore. They were monsters, just like the hostile mobs all around them. When the sun rose, the skeletons fled to the shadows, but the creepers remained with their broken spirits. The village elders vacated their dirt huts, and the caravan continued its journey toward the villager outpost. Before long, the villager outpost appeared through the fog, and the creepers knew their deaths were near. The elders reminded them that they were doing this for the good of their village, and they would be remembered as heroes.
Your families will be grateful for your sacrifice. Think of them as you take those pillagers out.
But the creepers knew better. Their existence had been kept secret, and while life might improve for those they left behind, they would never learn of what the elders were forcing them to do. Even so, each of the creepers knew that it was too late for them to return to their old lives. So they marched toward the outpost with their heads held high. Stevius spotted a pillager atop the tower with his crossbow, but felt no fear. The pillagers had never seen a creeper before, and had no reason to raise their defenses. The creepers filed into the outpost while the iron golems and village elders remained at a safe distance to observe the attack. A moment later, a series of explosions rocked the base of the tower, blowing its wooden support beams to shreds. Every pillager in the tower was killed, and their banners fell to the ground. Stevius was the only creeper still standing, and he heard one of the elders call out to him.
Hey, what are you doing just standing there? One of them's getting away.
Shaken out of his stunned state, Stevius spotted a pillager running into the tree line. He scurried after the receding shadow, darting between trees until he was deep within the woods. The death he'd just seen echoed in his mind, and a flood of emotions rushed through him.
Hey, what are you doing just...
Every pillager in the tower was killed, and their banners fell to the ground. Stevius was the only creeper still standing, and he heard one of the elders call out to him.
Hey, what are you doing just standing there? One of them's getting away.
Shaken out of his stunned state, Stevius spotted a pillager running into the tree line. He scurried after the receding shadow, darting between trees until he was deep within the woods. The death he'd just seen echoed in his mind, and a flood of emotions rushed through him. Sorrow for his fellow creepers, anger at the elders for turning them all into monsters, and confusingly, a desire to make them proud of him. He thought he'd lost his lead when he heard a gasp from behind a tree nearby. The last surviving pillager tried to find an escape, but he was trapped between Stevius and a ravine.
Please don't kill me. I have a wife and kids. At least I did before those explosions.
Face to face with a supposed enemy, Stevius realized that he was simply a victim of the Elder's attack. This pillager's life was forever changed through their actions, just as his own was. The first creeper stepped back, his heart aching for all those who had been hurt by the Elder's decisions, and he knew what he had to do. Night fell around the remains of the pillager outpost, shrouding the Elders and their golems as they toyed with the spoils of their attack. In the hours since Stevius disappeared into the woods, they'd grown bored of the new crossbows, and anxiety began to creep into their hearts. Shouldn't we have heard an explosion by now? Suddenly, the first creeper emerged from the woods, striding purposefully towards the village elders. They asked him what had happened to the pillager, how he disposed of him without detonating himself. Stevius said nothing as he crept closer, igniting fear in the elders' hearts for the first time. They hesitantly warned him to stop, saying that there was no point in taking his anger out on them. Nothing he did would reverse his transformation or reunite him with his family. But Stevius's rage deafened him to their pleas. The golem stepped forward to protect their masters as an arrow struck one of the elders. From atop the outpost, the last villager rained shots down on those who'd ordered the attack on his people. The golems, sensing the new threat to their masters, rushed to the broken base of the tower, but couldn't find a way to reach the assailants.
teleports you to where the Ender Pearl is. Basically, we have a remote redstone teleporter. Now, how we're going to use this is as a
Okay, make sure to like and subscribe,
So
turn on
this is how
post
it works.
notifications
You
so when
link
I
up a
upload,
secret
and I'll
button
see you
to
guys
a
in the
very
next one.
well-hidden Ender